From now on, you will decide when we talk or spend time together. Stop chasing me," Emily Cooper said, her tone calm but firm, and Ryan Cooper froze mid-step, feeling the weight of the words settle like ice across his chest. The afternoon light fell softly through the living room windows, illuminating the tidy suburban home that had once been warm with shared laughter, now strangely quiet except for the faint ticking of the wall clock and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Ryan lowered his gaze to the coffee cup in his hand, watching the steam curl upward, and realized that for the first time in years, the rhythm of their lives would no longer revolve around his effort to maintain connection, his subtle gestures, and the small acts of care that had once defined his role in their marriage. Memories of mornings spent preparing breakfast, evenings cleaning up after her busy days, and weekends devoted to errands and home projects flashed through his mind, each one a silent testimony to his dedication, yet each now seeming almost invisible, unacknowledged, as if they had never mattered. Emily moved toward the sofa, adjusting a throw pillow, glancing at her phone, and Ryan observed without comment, noting the slight hesitation in her posture, the small, almost imperceptible pause before she sat. All details that spoke volumes in a conversation where words were sparse but significance-heavy. He thought of the countless moments where he had extended patience, choosing to listen rather than argue, to support rather than insist, and he felt the quiet ache of recognition that those efforts, no matter how sincere, had not shifted her perception or her sense of control within their shared life. The room smelled faintly of brewed coffee and the soft aroma of freshly laundered sheets, scents that once suggested comfort but now underscored the distance between them, and Ryan realized that his presence, once assumed and relied upon, was now subject to arbitrary limits imposed by Emily's decisions, each one a subtle reminder that he was no longer the initiator of connection or attention. Yet within him stirred a resolve, tempered by years of EXP. Ryan Cooper did not answer Emily immediately, because some sentences deserve the silence they create. He stood beside the coffee table, looking at the cup he had placed so carefully on the coaster, watching a thin ring of moisture form beneath it like a quiet mark left by something ordinary. The house in Portland had always made small sounds in the late afternoon. The refrigerator clicked. The floorboard settled. A car passed outside, tires hissing softly over damp pavement from a morning rain. For 10 years, those sounds had meant home. Now they felt like a waiting room. Emily sat on the sofa with one leg tucked beneath her, phone resting face down against her thigh, her expression composed in that polished way she used whenever she wanted a conversation to end on her terms. Ryan looked at his wedding ring, the faint scratches in the gold catching the window light, and remembered buying it at a small jewelry store off Northwest 23rd Avenue when money was tight and hope was not. Back then, they had laughed about budgets, eaten dollar tacos on Friday nights, and made plans on napkins because the future still felt like something they were building together. He had worked overtime when the roof needed repair. He had learned to fix the backyard fence after a winter storm pushed 2 panels loose. He had cooked dinner on nights she came home drained from work, reheating his own plate later because she said she needed quiet first. He had sent careful texts, not too many, not too needy, just enough to remind her that someone was thinking about her. Most went unanswered for hours, some for days, and whenever he asked if something was wrong, she told him he was making pressure out of nothing. That was how distance becomes policy, not with one slammed door, but with 1,000 small permissions withdrawn until love starts feeling like an appointment you have to request. Emily glanced up when he stayed quiet too long. "Do not look like that," she said. "I am just asking for space." Ryan almost nodded from habit. The old version of him would have softened his voice, apologized for caring too much, promised to do better at needing less. But something in him had shifted when she told him to stop chasing her. The words were cruel, yes, but they were also clear. And clarity, even painful clarity, gives a man something solid to stand on. He walked to the kitchen sink and rinsed the cup he had not finished drinking from. The water ran warm over his fingers. Steam rose faintly against the window. He dried the cup, placed it in the cabinet, and felt the first small door close inside him. Emily watched from the living room, probably expecting him to circle back, to explain, to plead, to ask when she might be ready to love him on a schedule she approved. He did not. He only said, "I heard you." 2 words. Calm. Final in a way she did not yet understand. Then he picked up his keys from the counter, walked into the garage, and stood beside the old workbench where half-finished shelves waited under a layer of sawdust. For the first time in years, he did not wonder how to reach her. He wondered what his life would feel like if he stopped trying. Ryan Cooper stayed in the garage until the light outside thinned into evening blue, not because he needed to fix the shelves, but because the smell of sawdust and motor oil gave his hands something honest to do. He ran sandpaper along the edge of a board, slow and even, listening to the quiet scrape of grit against wood. It was a better sound than waiting for a phone to light up. 10 years of marriage had taught him how to wait. He had waited through dinners Emily canceled 15 minutes before the reservation because she was tired. He had waited in parking lots outside restaurants while she finished one more work call. He had waited on the living room sofa with 2 mugs of tea going cold because she said she would be down in a minute and came down 40 minutes later, already scrolling through messages. Waiting had become his second language. At first, he told himself it was love. Then he called it patience. Later, when the silence stretched and the excuses thinned, he called it marriage going through a season. Men will rename pain a dozen times before they admit it has become normal. He remembered their first house hunt, driving through Portland neighborhoods in a borrowed sedan with a cracked windshield, laughing every time a listing said charming when it meant tiny. Emily had squeezed his hand at a stoplight and said, "As long as we choose each other, the house does not matter." He believed her. So when they bought the small place with the narrow driveway and the sagging back fence, he made it matter. He painted the guest room twice because she changed her mind about the color. He spent 3 Saturdays hauling mulch into the yard because she wanted the garden to feel alive. He worked late shifts when the furnace died, picked up freelance estimates on weekends, and saved quietly for the anniversary trip she later canceled because her friends planned a wine count. The next morning arrived gray and wet, the kind of Portland morning where the sky hangs low over the roofs and every window looks like it is holding its breath. Ryan Cooper woke before his alarm, not because he had slept well, but because his body had learned the old routine of checking whether Emily had texted during the night. His hand moved toward the nightstand before his mind caught up. The screen was dark. No message. No missed call. No little sign that she had regretted the way she spoke to him. For a moment, the old ache rose in his chest, that familiar urge to reach across the silence and make it easier for her to return. Then he remembered the line he had typed in the garage. "I will stop chasing." He got out of bed quietly, showered, dressed in a gray button-down shirt, and made coffee for 1. Not 2. The difference felt small until he set only 1 mug on the counter. The house smelled of rain, toast, and the faint lavender detergent Emily liked. She came downstairs 20 minutes later in workout clothes, phone in hand, hair pulled back, expression neutral. "Morning," she said, like yesterday had been a weather change instead of a warning shot. Ryan looked up from his laptop. Morning. Nothing more. No careful smile. No question about how she slept. No offer to make breakfast. Emily paused at the edge of the kitchen island, waiting for the next line he usually provided. It did not come. She opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of water, and said, "I have yoga after work, so I probably will not be home for dinner." Ryan nodded once. "Okay." The word was clean. Not bitter. Not warm. Just placed there like a folded napkin. Emily glanced at him again, a small crease appearing between her brows. She had expected disappointment, maybe a soft request to spend time together later, maybe one more attempt from him to prove that he still cared enough to ask. Ryan returned his eyes to the spreadsheet on his screen. In truth, he was not working. He was making a list. Shared subscriptions, household bills, car insurance, credit cards, the mortgage, the savings account, the small emergency fund his father had told him every grown man should keep separate, not as a secret, but as a seat belt. He wrote everything down with the same quiet discipline he used at work. Not to punish her, to see clearly. For 6 months, Emily had turned marriage into a hallway where every door opened only from her side. She decided when to answer, when to vanish, when to return, when to call his hurt sensitivity, when to call his patience pressure. Now Ryan was doing something different. He was not knocking. He was measuring the hallway. Emily left without saying goodbye beyond a quick, "See you later," and the front door clicked shut behind her. The sound moved through the house and faded. Ryan sat still for a long minute, listening to rain tap against the kitchen window. Then he opened a new checking account online, scheduled his paycheck to deposit there starting next cycle, and canceled the Friday dinner reservation he had made 3 weeks earlier for their anniversary. The confirmation email disappeared from his calendar with one click. Strange how a decade can begin loosening one quiet choice at a time. By Friday afternoon, Ryan Cooper had become a man Emily Cooper did not know how to read anymore. He still moved through the house with the same quiet manners, still rinsed his plate after breakfast, still locked the back door before leaving for work, still paid the mortgage before the due date. But something essential had been removed from the air. The reaching, the checking, the careful warmth he used to place between them like a bridge. At first, Emily seemed relieved. On Wednesday night, she came home from dinner with friends at almost 10 o'clock, dropped her keys into the ceramic bowl by the door, and found no text asking when she would be back. No missed call, no reheated plate waiting under foil. Just the kitchen light over the stove, one clean glass drying by the sink, and Ryan's work boots neatly placed near the garage door. She stood there longer than she needed to. Ryan heard her from the office, but did not step out. He had already eaten. He had already walked the neighborhood alone, 2 miles under a sky the color of wet cement, letting the cold air clear the old habit of wondering if she was thinking about him. On Thursday, she waited until noon to answer his simple message about the electric bill, then sent back 3 words. "Handle it, please." The old Ryan would have replied right away, maybe with a thumbs up, maybe with something soft to keep the peace. This Ryan paid the bill, saved the receipt, and said nothing. That night, Emily sat across from him at the dining table, scrolling through her phone while he read a book. She cleared her throat once. Then again. "Finally," she said, "you are being strange." Ryan turned a page. "I am giving you the space you asked for." Her eyes narrowed, not angry exactly, more unsettled. "That does not mean act like a roommate." He looked up then, and the silence between them tightened. "Emily, you told me to stop chasing you." She looked away first. That was new. Friday morning, Ryan canceled the couple's massage she had once insisted they book for their anniversary weekend and removed his card from the boutique fitness membership she had been charging to their shared account for months. He did not cancel her access to necessities. He did not touch the mortgage, utilities, insurance, or groceries. He simply stopped funding the extras that had become invisible because he had always absorbed them. Then he called a family law attorney named Marcus Hale and scheduled a consultation for Monday at 9 o'clock. The receptionist asked if the matter was urgent. Ryan looked around the quiet office at the framed photo of him and Emily from a camping trip near Mount Hood, both of them smiling beside a foggy trail. "No," he said. "It is not urgent anymore. It is overdue." When he hung up, he felt no victory, only a sad, steady clarity. By evening, Emily texted him from upstairs instead of walking down the hall. "We need to talk." Ryan stared at the message while rain tapped softly against the window. For years, those 4 words would have pulled him running. This time, he typed back slowly, without anger and without apology. "I am available Monday after my appointment." Ryan Cooper spent Saturday morning differently than he had spent any Saturday in years. The house felt lighter without the constant tension of anticipation, without the invisible thread that had once tied him to Emily Cooper's whims. He made a pot of coffee for himself, pouring it slowly into a mug and watching the steam rise in lazy curls against the pale morning light. The living room was quiet, the hum of the refrigerator and the soft patter of rain on the windows filling the space in a way that was familiar but newly peaceful. Emily was upstairs, likely scrolling through messages, checking plans, trying to feel the pulse of a relationship she believed she controlled. Ryan did not reach for his phone, did not text, did not call. He did not glance at the clock for when she might descend. Instead, he walked to the garage, opened the door, and felt the smell of wood and sawdust. He touched the unfinished shelves, ran a hand along the surface, appreciating the tangibility of effort, of things he could shape with his hands and not with worry over someone else's attention. For a moment, he allowed himself to remember how he had once measured love in minutes spent together, in timely responses, in attention that bent his schedule to hers. That effort, sincere as it was, had been invisible to her, often disregarded, occasionally criticized as too much or not enough. Now, Ryan measured nothing but his own choices. He opened a notebook and began to make lists: household accounts, shared subscriptions, savings, pending repairs, tasks that only he needed to complete for himself, not for her acknowledgement. The act of writing became ritual, a steadying motion against the chaos that had passed for marriage. Later, he stepped outside and walked down the driveway into the muted drizzle, letting the rain soak his jacket, cool against his skin, sharp against the habitual warmth of worry. He imagined Emily looking down from the window, expecting to see him anxious or restless, and felt a faint smile in the corner of his mouth, not triumph, just the quiet acknowledgement that he was finally unbound. Returning inside, he ate breakfast at the table alone, no plates left for two, no anticipation of her voice. In the empty room, he felt the space for thought and reflection, the room to breathe, the room to exist without a constant eye upon him. Emily appeared briefly at the stair landing, looked down, hesitated, and left without comment. Ryan simply finished his coffee and picked up a hammer and a block of wood, listening to the soft tap as he worked, each strike a beat of independence, each measurement a pulse of clarity, each motion a quiet step away from the patterns that had dictated his life for too long. The morning stretched forward, ordinary and controlled, and Ryan, for the first time in months, felt the calm certainty of being fully himself in a house he still loved, yet no longer a captive to someone else's schedule, attention, or affection. By late afternoon, Ryan Cooper had found a rhythm of solitude that was both unfamiliar and strangely comforting. The house, with its familiar lines and objects, no longer felt like a stage for expectation but a space he could inhabit on his own terms. He walked through the living room, adjusting the throw pillow on the sofa not for Emily, but to satisfy a personal sense of order, noticing how the sun, now dipping toward the horizon, cast long golden slats across the hardwood floor. The ticking of the clock, once background to constant worry, became a measured beat for his own thought. Ryan sat at the desk in the corner, opened a notebook, and began to write letters he would not send, thoughts he had once swallowed in hopes they would appear unimportant to Emily, words of hope, words of disappointment, words of quiet acknowledgement for all the years he had given freely without clear recognition. He sipped coffee and watched rain begin to fall, droplets tracing paths on the window pane, each small mark a reminder of movement, of passage, of change. Later, he moved to the kitchen to prepare a simple dinner for himself, peeling vegetables, boiling water, stirring, tasting, noting the satisfaction of control over a small process entirely his own. Emily appeared briefly at the stair landing, phone in hand, expression careful, almost testing. She spoke a word, perhaps greeting, perhaps observation, but Ryan only nodded, eyes returning to the chopping board. No pleading, no coaxing, no chase. The calm in him was evident, tangible, a presence that required acknowledgement yet asked nothing. He cleared the table afterward, stacked dishes neatly in the sink, allowed the soft hum of the refrigerator and the wind against the windows to fill the empty spaces that had once been heavy with negotiation and subtle tension. As dusk approached, he retrieved his running shoes, laced them deliberately, and stepped outside into the crisp evening air, taking the long route down the quiet street, feet wet from puddles, lungs drawing in a freshness he had not noticed for years. With each step, he felt the weight of expectation falling away, leaving only clarity and intention. The evening light diminished, shadows growing long across lawns and driveways. Yet Ryan's path was clear in his mind, to continue living fully in each moment, to honor his own boundaries, to listen to the quiet truth of his own presence, and to allow the rhythm of the house and the world outside to guide him without anxiety or pretense. Understanding finally that the truest connection in life begins with self-respect and the courage to step back when necessary. Sunday morning arrived quiet and silver with rain glinting off the street. Ryan Cooper stayed in the kitchen, preparing breakfast just for himself, moving through motions that had once been shared and now felt like small victories. The aroma of brewing coffee mixed with the faint scent of toasted bread as he laid out a single plate, knife, and fork, noting how empty the other side of the table looked, a void that once had been filled with constant expectation. Emily Cooper was upstairs, probably scrolling her phone, probably thinking about how she might prod him today, but Ryan did not anticipate, did not reach, did not wonder. He sat, sipped his coffee, and stared through the window at the garden where winter rain had slicked every branch and leaf, appreciating the clarity of observation without interpretation. After finishing breakfast, he retrieved his notebook and began writing, not to send, not to show, but to order thoughts that had long been scattered across sleepless nights and tense evenings. He wrote about decisions made, boundaries crossed, moments of silent tension, and the newfound space he was carving in his own life. Outside, the rain eased to mist, and Ryan stepped into it, coat buttoned, shoes squelching softly, walking the familiar route to the small park nearby. Each footstep felt deliberate, each breath in the damp air a marker of independence. He watched a squirrel dart through the grass, raindrops forming small craters where it landed, and smiled faintly, recognizing that life could continue to surprise him even in the absence of partnership. Returning home, he cleaned the kitchen, placed the notebook on the counter for future reflection, and checked the mail without expectation. Emily's envelope slid quietly under the door, containing a mundane statement about a delivery, and Ryan noted it without reaction. The day progressed, sunlight piercing the clouds briefly, warming the hardwood floors, and Ryan continued organizing his personal space, fixing minor household issues, checking accounts, and planning the week ahead. By afternoon, he walked through the house slowly, touching familiar surfaces, appreciating the comfort and predictability of routine shaped entirely by his choices. Emily appeared at the landing briefly, glanced at him with a questioning expression, and moved on without interruption. Ryan did not follow, did not comment, did not change the rhythm of his day. He read, he cleaned, he planned, he walked. The hours were his own, marked not by requests or approval, but by the quiet cadence of autonomy. By evening, the house was calm, rain tapping against windows, and Ryan prepared a simple dinner for himself, reflecting on the strange new balance of domestic life where attention, effort, and care were directed inward, and for the first time in years, it felt steady, measured, and fully under his control. Monday came with a pale morning light and the sound of rain sliding down the gutters, and Ryan Cooper walked into Marcus Hale's office at exactly 9 o'clock with a folder under his arm and a calm he had not felt in years. The office was simple, with gray carpet, framed certificates, and a window overlooking a wet Portland street where cars moved slowly through traffic. Marcus listened without interrupting while Ryan explained the last 6 months, the canceled dinners, the ignored messages, the emotional rules, and the moment Emily Cooper told him to stop chasing her. When Ryan finished, Marcus leaned back and said, "Sometimes the most important boundary is the one you finally keep." That sentence stayed with him on the drive home. By the time he pulled into the driveway, the rain had softened into mist, and Emily was standing in the living room window, watching him with a look he had not seen from her in a long time. Uncertainty. She met him near the kitchen island, arms folded, voice careful. "So we are really doing this." Ryan set the folder on the counter. "I am doing what you asked. I stopped chasing." Her face tightened because the words sounded different now that they were no longer under her control. She said she had only wanted space. He said space had been given. She said he was making it bigger than it needed to be. He said a marriage cannot survive when one person decides affection is permission-based and the other is expected to keep auditioning for basic kindness. The house went quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Rain tapped softly against the glass. Emily looked toward the sofa where they had spent 100 evenings beside each other while feeling miles apart. "I did not think you would actually stop," she whispered. Ryan looked at her then, not with anger, but with the tired tenderness of a man finally putting down something too heavy to carry. "That was the problem," he said. "You thought my love meant I would never choose myself." He did not slam a door. He did not make a speech for the sake of winning. He simply packed a small bag, placed the attorney's card on the kitchen counter, and told her any serious conversation would happen when both of them were ready to speak with honesty, not control. Then he drove to a quiet extended-stay hotel 5 miles away, checked into a room with beige walls and a view of the parking lot, and sat on the edge of the bed while the heater clicked on. It was not beautiful. It was not dramatic. But it was peaceful. For the first time in years, no one was deciding when he was allowed to matter. So after hearing Ryan's choice, what would you have done in his place? Would you keep chasing someone who turned love into permission, Or would you finally protect the part of yourself that had been waiting to be respected? If stories like this make you think about dignity, boundaries, and the quiet strength it takes to walk away without anger, stay with this channel. Because sometimes the strongest ending is not revenge, it is peace.